Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Skull.
I'm Zombie Cat.
And this is the Horror Den, and welcome back to Horror Havoc.
Yee-hoo!
I hope you've been keeping up to date with all of our Horror Havoc videos thus far through the month of October. We're really excited about what's coming next. But, you know, if you like what we're doing here, just like and subscribe like always. And without further ado, let's get into our review of The Mist.
Hit it, sisters!
I've never seen this.
Yeah, this was super exciting because me and D-Mac have seen this movie multiple times. He had never seen it, so he never knew how it ended.
Now, before I get any judgment for the fact that I haven't seen this movie, even though it's been out for almost 20 years, it just never crossed my path. I had always heard about it, but, you know, the people who introduced me into horror when I was very young, this just wasn't on their list at the time. And so, you know, would have probably got around to it anyway, but it didn't cross paths with me. That's why I haven't seen it. So, but I really enjoyed it, and let's get into a little plot synopsis real quick. So, our story begins with an artist by the name of David, and he's painting. And he's painting a picture of, like, Clint Eastwood, like a poster. And
he also has a painting of The Thing.
Yeah, which loved it. I want it in my room, personally. But as they're all, you know, he's, like, doing his thing, he kind of goes downstairs with his family. A storm rolls in, and we see this really cool shot of they're watching this thunderstorm, like this lightning and thunderstorm coming in. And we have to mention it because it was just like during the whole first part of this movie, I was going, man, this is a little close to real life recently.
Yeah, I know. We
but,
just got past Hurricane
Helene.
Helene, yeah.
Which was a bad thing in and of itself, but it's just we see the storm roll in, and then we cut to see a tree fall into the house, and we see like a bunch of busted glass and stuff. And it fast forwards to the next morning. Turns out this tree was his grandfather's tree that fell over, and it damaged his art studio, destroyed the painting that he was working on.
Yeah, now he's gonna be overdue on a painting that needed to be done for something, I don't remember.
Yeah, he has like a art expo, I guess, or something.
Yeah, he works with Hollywood or something like that to
Yeah,
make movie posters.
Yeah. And also, like, him and his wife are out front, and they're talking about how this list of stuff that they need to fix things, and their kid Billy runs up and is like, you gotta see the boathouse. And they go over, and this tree had fell on top of it.
Decimated.
And it was apparently a tree that's owned by the neighbor because it's on his property, and apparently David has been trying for like 3 years to get him to cut it down.
It's also implied that he had been sued by his neighbor before because his wife jokingly says that you already know he's just gonna say I'll sue you. And they're just like, well, let's just go talk to him anyway. But
he goes over and is like, I just need your insurance information, that's all. It turns out that a tree fell on this guy's car, and so it's like, well, damn, man, that sucks, I'm sorry. And he's like, you wouldn't be going into town, would you?
Yeah.
And so they all ride together.
They kind of have like a little connection. They're like, oh, okay, maybe you're not too bad.
Yeah, so they decide to ride to the supermarket together, and in the car we see a bunch of like lineman workers like passing them by, and then we see a bunch of military presence.
Bunch of soldiers.
And it turns out that up on the mountain there is a we didn't mention this, but there is a shot when they're outside where they actually see the mist rolling in on the lake. We cut back to they're on the road, and we see this large presence of military people passing by, and that's when the attorney / neighbor, I don't know his name really at all. I'm sure it's mentioned, and I'm sure that somebody will remember it as we go along, but he's like, hey, you're a local, David. You know, what do you know about the base up in the mountain that's called the Arrowhead Project or some bullshit? But he starts talking about how there's like this rumor that's always been around that like a UFO crashed near here, and they have like frozen alien bodies on ice up there.
Yeah,
and
just like it's like a conspiracy theory, like hot topic, I guess. Like the locals just theorize all these different things about it.
Right, but they brush it off as just like local folklore.
Yeah.
And they go to the supermarket, and it's, of course, just like in true Southern fashion during any kind of snow or any kind of storm at all, the entire supermarket is packed to the gills with people, all stocking up on supplies and stuff.
And they're having to do it without power, so they're only doing it through cash and receipts. Just
there's a generator that's running like the freezers, but all like main power is like been cut, and so
which once again is like spookily similar to what's happening now. But.
But they decide they're getting their stuff together, and eventually we see this group of soldiers, and they come in. It seems like they're going on leave or something, but an MP, military police, shows up and is like, you can't leave, like all leaving has been cut off, and I don't know why. And then he leaves. But they're waiting in line at the checkout, and then we see this guy with like a bloody nose running away from something, and he comes into the supermarket and he's like, there's something in the mist, it got so and so, he's gone, I heard him screaming. And thus begins probably what is the rest of the 90-minute plus just fest of craziness.
Yeah,
it really is the inciting incident, I guess. Because shortly after he arrives inside, that's when the mist fully rolls in.
Yeah, it's like right on his tail, I believe. Like as soon as he gets in, it's there.
But right before the mist rolls in and before he runs up, we see like a bunch of like firefighters and police, like sirens and stuff like that. And we hear a siren sound right before we see him appear on screen, and he runs up, saying there's something in the mist. And there's this one dude who's like, fuck this, I'm going to my car. And he runs out as the mist is approaching. He's getting in his car, and then the mist overtakes him, and there's silence, and then we just hear screaming. So it's implied that he's definitely gone. And then the whole supermarket rumbles like an earthquake had just rolled in, and everybody's kind of freaking out, not knowing sure what's going on. And then this lady speaks up and is like, they're like, don't go outside. And then this lady, who is, I don't know, she doesn't have a name in the movie.
I don't think she
does. But it's Carol from The Walking Dead, for those of you who don't know. And she is like, I got to get home to my kids. Like, I left my 8-year-old watching my younger kid.
It was like she left the kid to watch the younger child, but she forgets to keep an eye on her.
Yeah, because the kid is 8 years old that's watching the baby. And so she's like, I'm leaving no matter what. Will anybody accompany me? Nobody speaks up. And so she's like, fine then. And she leaves.
Yeah.
And we see her walk into the mist. And that's the last we see of her, really. So after she leaves, at this point, Billy Boy here is really freaking out. I think rightfully so, being a very small, boy. He's not a toddler, but he's like a young kid, like maybe at most 10 years old, probably like 8 or 9.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
But he's trying to console his son here. It's established by what we hear in the background that there's no phone, there's no radio, there's no incoming, outgoing messages going on at all. So he asked the store, one of the store clerks, Ollie, which Ollie is my favorite character in this
freaking
entire
badass
movie. He is like, he's been in other things. I don't know what his name is. But he's like, he asked him for a blanket, and he's like, oh yeah, there's something out in the loading docks that can really help, like basically be a substitute. And so David goes out there and he finds that the generator is smoking and backing up, and so he cuts it off. And then we get this really cool shot of like the back metal doors, I guess, to the
where you would
dock.
unload truck.
Yeah, where it would like back up, but we see it bow, like something's pushing on it, and it's almost like it's about to break. But he goes out and he's like shook up by what he just saw, and he's encountered by this group of yokels.
Yeah,
that are like, what's going on back there? And it's like, what about, we knew something was wrong with the generator, we were going back there to fix it. Oh, I turned off the generator. Did y'all hear that? And they're like, what'd you think you hear, bud?
yeah, just straight. straight country.
Well, as country as Maine can get, you know, it's the rednecks of Maine, I guess. Which, by the way, if you didn't know, this is a Stephen King novel, where it's based on a Stephen King novel. So of course it takes place in Maine. It just kind of goes with the territory, which I will say, I think everybody did really good with like their regionalisms and their like their accent or their dialect.
Yeah. I think I did pick up on that a little bit this time around.
Yeah, it didn't really break my immersion, so I thought it was a really nice touch. But anyway, so they all go back into the loading dock. Turns out that something is blocking the exhaust on the outside to the generator. And so they're like, somebody's going to have to go out there and fix it.
What really sucks is they don't even need to do this. They have more than enough resources. They're completely fine. They're just, the way he describes it is like, we're so uncontrol of everything that they just want to have control of at least this.
Yeah, it's something that they can tangibly fix. And this kid, Norm, who's like a bag boy, he's like, you know, fuck it, I'll do it. You know, I'm going to go out there and fix it right now.
From like a freaking 16, 17-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And up until this point, we have no proof that there is anything in the mist. Like, we've just heard screams, but it could be anything as far as we know. You know, for all we know, it could be the fog, and the fog's killing them. I don't know, you know. But Norm's like, you know, raise it up and I'll go out. And, you know, David's like, you don't have to do this, Norm.
They start giving David
Major
hell.
shit.
Like, they are making fun of him. They're calling him crazy. The rednecks are just going insane, laughing at how just, I don't know, how crazy he sounds.
Keep calling him a wuss because he's not willing to like sacrifice himself. Basically, it's like you know, we've heard the screams. Like, I think that's reason enough not to open up this friggin' door. Like, better safe than sorry.
You saying that just reminded me of that meme where it's like, what's he doing? He's going to sacrifice himself.
What is it? Going to sacrifice himself.
But Norm is like, pussy. And he opens it
Yeah.
up and he's like looking at the mist, which they had this really cool effect where like I guess a fog machine or something, they had it to where it was not crossing over into the building. It just wouldn't come in.
I was curious about that because it seems like that in a lot of structures outside of the pharmacy, but when it came to like cars and stuff, whenever they would open the door, like it seemed to...
This is kind of how I think about it. Like, imagine you have this building that is running air through it and pushing air out. You open the door, and that air that's ventilating through the building could just be pushing the mist back enough to keep it from
That's
coming
true.
in.
But they
That's
don't have any
kinda why-
power. So technically the vent works aren't pushing out air.
Yeah, well, that also could just be like, you've seen fog in a room with no fans on, right? It just
Yeah, it just sits.
You could open that door up, and that fog
That's true.
could just sit in the door, and nothing's really sucking it in or pushing it in.
I don't know. I think we're looking at it too realistically. I think that it's more of
Yeah,
a supernatural element.
Yeah.
Okay, spoilers ahead. That we haven't got to yet. I think that it has something to do with the presence of the actual creatures. Because in the pharmacy, the creatures were inside the pharmacy. So therefore the mist was inside the pharmacy.
Okay, yeah, that's a good
You know,
point.
there are no,
Yeah.
besides that one scene, there are no creatures present. They haven't set up shop in the supermarket. So therefore the mist hasn't taken it over.
It's kind of like
almost
a territory.
I think of it more like a Mist of War in a video game, where it's like you look at the map and you see where you haven't been and it's all foggy, but then once you go there, the fog clears. It's kind of like that in reverse, where the fog is trying to take over the whole map.
Yeah.
But it's where it has to be first. Like the enemies inside of it have to go there first. I don't know. That's my theory. But moving on. So they open it up, and the cool effect with the fog happens, and he's like looking in, all curious and whatnot, and then all of a sudden he turns around and he's like, "There's nothing out there," and then bam, he gets grabbed by a tentacle.
Yeah, this freaking gigantic tentacle, multiple. Well, first it's just one. It just what does it grab? It grabs his.
He grabs his leg.
It grabs one leg, and then as David, everyone else is just stunned in silence. Like,
Somebody help me! Somebody help me!
at first I was like, it's kind of weird they're not reacting, but it's probably just pure shock.
You know what? We'll see how we all respond when we see a tentacle come out of the mist and grab
Yeah.
somebody.
it's messed up because the I say rednecks.
They are rednecks.
Yeah, the northern necks were like posturing about how tough they were and wanting to go outside, and then as soon as they open the door and the freaking tentacle comes in, they're like stuck in the corner, paralyzed in fear because like they're just not willing to actually do anything. It's like,
you know, that poses a really good question for all the audience members out there. If you're from the north, what do you call country bumpkins? Like from your area?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I guess yokel is a word. Like,
Yeah.
I guess that they would use, but we call them rednecks because that's what they are to us, or country bumpkins.
down to the
You know, I'm just curious. So if you made it this far in the video, let us know in the comments. I'm really curious about regionalisms right now. But a really funny part in this scene where everybody's just standing there. He's like, "Help me, help me!" And we see the like Norm just look back, and there's like a bunch of these tentacles coming out of the mist, and he's like, "There's more," and it's just like, "You goddamn right, there's more." But long story short, Norm gets got pretty hard.
Yeah, it's pretty grisly. Does it bite his chest first?
It's
or
like-
It's like
It's-
it rips the chunk off his thigh as it's like coming in, and then
It's-
it rips his...
It reminds, this is such a nerdy reference, but the tentacles remind me of a displacer beast from Dungeons and Dragons that has these like tentacles coming off of the back, and the way it opens like a flower, like the kind of like a predator's mouth, but it opens like this, and it has these like spikes on the end like a Venus flytrap, and it like clamps and then rips. It's strange.
Yeah, it's like the tentacles themselves are mouths.
Yeah.
Teeth,
Yeah.
and claws.
Yeah, at first they get his leg, and then it comes back up and just rips a chunk out of his chest, and it's like, ooh.
Pretty brutal.
But he eventually, you know, they lose grip because not enough people are helping, and he gets pulled into the mist. And then the tentacles are still there when Ollie, my man, breaks open the emergency axe, and it's like they start trying to get rid of these tentacles, and David grabs the axe and like starts hacking away at it, and they're like, "Turn on the generator and close the damn door!" And so that's what they do. One of the tentacles is blocking the way, so David cuts it off, and it like remains there. And everybody, realizing the gravity of the situation, decides we need to tell people, but how do we do it without inciting a panic? So they go back, and they're all talking about this now that they know that it's real, and they see the group of out-of-towners. That's what they call them, and that includes the neighbor who has apparently sued our main character before. And he goes over because, you know, they have this kind of like friendship thing brewing, I guess, like a trust in each other now.
Yeah.
And he's like,
He even trusted him with his kid, like going into the store. He was like, "Can I go in with him?"
yeah. And he's like, "Look, this is the situation." And he's like, "Guys, I'm sorry, I'm just not that stupid."
Also, the owner of the store, I believe, or a higher up, is also with him, because he starts saying he's gonna write down people's names and shit.
File him to the police.
Yeah.
But I mean, before that even happens, like, you know, it basically like this whole thing of like, you know, he feels like he's trying to be tricked by the locals. And then, you know, the manager gets involved, and he's like, "We'll show you." And so they take the manager back there, show him the tentacle, and they poke it, and it starts wiggling before literally melting into a pile of goo.
Yeah, it's like acid, like straight steaming out of it.
Not quite to alien blood level, but close.
Yeah.
It didn't go through the cement. But this is a really funny shot. The doors open, and they're all standing there, and the manager's like, "We might have a situation of great magnitude on our hands." Like, no shit, buddy. It's at this moment that all the characters kind of look at each other and go, "Oh shit, our whole front of store is made out of glass that's cracked because of the earthquake. So what are we gonna do?" And so they decide to start reinforcing it. And we cut ahead to, we've seen her a few times, but Mrs.
And they've kind of like hearsayed about her, kind of like this lady's crazy.
And you'll see why. We are introduced to Mrs. Carmody fully. She's in the bathroom praying. She's said some offhanded religious shit so far anyway, but she's in the bathroom, and there's this teacher that's been friends with David so far in the movie, who comes in and is like, "Hey, if you ever need a friend or need somebody to talk to," and she's like, "Don't you condescend me, I have the Lord." Which to say that me and Zombie Cat and D-Mac have met people
Oh, many
that
times.
resemble this lady. I can't tell you how many times I've met this lady. Not quite to this degree, but close. Close enough to make me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But
like an Old Testament religious kook, basically, is what.
what's up with all this woke shit? My God will strike you down.
And then by the end, she's a doomsday cultist.
I mean, pretty much. She's like, drink the Kool-Aid, bro.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best way to describe it. But anyway, so, you know, they're piling these bags of dog food and fertilizer to try to reinforce the front in case it goes away. And, you know, she goes on this whole spiel about how this is straight out of Revelations and that, you know, this is the end of times and we must face our maker, essentially. Especially after some people are like, well, what do we do? You know, what do you want us to do? And she's like, we need to prepare to die, pretty much. Which... we'll get to this, but she kind of changes her tune real quick about we should just prepare to die to something else. The out-of-towners decide that they've had enough of this craziness and that they're going to leave. And so they try to, like, reason with them, David does, and he's just met with nothing. And they come up with this idea of, like, it's established that there's this one older guy that has a truck out front that apparently has a shotgun in it.
Yep.
And they're like, okay, well, why don't you try to get that? You know, we need that. And one of the outer towners, like, I think he's a biker. He's like, shit, I'll do it. And he's like, oh, you're siding with them? No, I think it'd be smart for us to get that gun.
Yeah.
So they come up with a pretty genius plan of tying 300 feet of rope to his waist, like his belt loop, and for him to go after it. And if something happens, they can try to pull him back. So the out-of-towners disappear into the mist after the neighbor says to David, like, you know, what if you're wrong? And the neighbor says, well, I guess, you know, the joke's on me the whole time anyway.
Yeah.
And just so we're clear, we never see this group of people again in the movie.
Yeah, it's
ever.
just presumed they are dead. Maybe there's more on that in the book.
Yeah, maybe there is. Or, you know, it would honestly be cool, like, if they did make a sequel of this, like, after it had originally come out, and it was their perspective, like, what happened to them along the way. But then again, no offense, besides the neighbor, there was no pre-established characters in there. And also, nobody really liked the neighbor at this point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because he's not listening. He's not listening to the people.
He was just being the super, like, what am I trying to say? Like,
he's trying to be rational in a fantastical situation.
Yeah.
He's being every parent in Nightmare on Elm Street that doesn't believe their kid. That's what he's being.
They literally had proof if he would have just walked in there with them.
I know that's the other rough thing is, like, obviously this happened earlier, but when David was trying to get him to go, like, there's the tentacle on the floor, like, please come back here and look at it. The neighbor is just like, no, I'm not even gonna entertain the possibility that you could be tricking me right now. And it's like, oh my God, dude, please just listen to him.
And seeing this actor as this guy, I'm convinced that, I mean, it's never this severe, but I feel like he always sounds and acts like his character from Brooklyn Nine-Nine as the chief. Because he's just like, that's just his face, bro. Like, it's just him all the time. I'm convinced of it.
Over the past month, I've had him trained to retrieve plaques. And now, boy, it's time to make Daddy proud.
Yes, sir.
I could not have been more clearly talking to the dog.
You know, they decide to leave. They disappeared in the mist, never to be seen again. Then all focuses on the biker that has his waist tied with this 300 feet of rope.
It's a super suspenseful scene. He basically just walks out and they start feeding the rope forward and, like, making sure it stays loose. And then he goes for a good while, and then the rope kind of just drops. Like, it flops down, and then it kind of gives again. They're like, oh, we're still feeding it. And then all of a sudden the thing just jerks and they're just losing rope, and it starts freaking burning their hands. You can hear, like, the freaking rope. Oh my God, I had rope burn many times as a kid. I don't remember what from, but I know I've had it on my hands before. They're like getting handed towels and stuff just to hold it. Oh my God.
I've had rope burn like this, and for all the theater kids out there watching, I had mine from a fly system. And if anybody knows what a fly system is
that all the
there's a one rope and there's another rope on the other side that's weighted down by weights, and you have to put the weight corresponding to what you're holding up. But sometimes, transitions are quick if you've ever seen a theater play, and so they jerk that rope and you have to stop it somehow, which is why you're supposed to wear gloves. But in high school, we didn't. I think that's enough said.
Yeah, I definitely know I have had it, but I don't remember what. Just doing something as a kid, I remember like that feeling of just gripping my fist, and it was like, ow!
Yeah, it hurts.
It does hurt.
But they keep pulling, and we see the rope go up to the corner.
Like it starts just like lifting. They're just like, oh my god.
Oh no, what is happening? Before finally they start to like reel it in like a fish, and coming out of the mist, we see the biker. At least half of the biker.
Yeah.
His lower half.
When he starts pulling them in, like the rope is like solid white, but it's just like soaked in blood, and he's just pulling his thing.
Which makes me wonder, how the hell did the rope get that soaked in blood?
We don't know.
I mean, I guess it's just for like scare effect, but it's just like I was sitting there the whole
It
time
lets
going,
your imagination go wild. It's like, what could have happened?
Yeah. One dude got split in half.
Because at this point, we still really haven't seen anything other than some tentacles.
right.
Yeah.
Also, side note, we didn't mention this when we were talking about the gun in the car. Turns out that Miss third grade teacher over here and special ed teacher has a fucking revolver on her and like a bunch of bullets, or at least a good number of
It's
bullets.
just like a safety thing, her husband, because he's out of town a lot or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
So they have a gun and they wanted to get a shotgun, which now that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So after, this happens, they're like, well, shit, I guess there really is no getting out of here. So then it cuts to like that evening or something, and we see this cashier lady. I think her name is it's mentioned.
Yeah, and I do know that
It's like Sasha or something.
yeah, I do know Crazy Lady had another big preaching session at this point, and she's getting ready for the nighttime. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, she apparently claims that like the monsters will come again at night.
Yeah.
And then we fast forward to that night and we see, I'm going to call her Sasha. I might be wrong, so don't come at me. But we see Sasha and I have his name, Jessup, Private Jessup, one of the soldiers. They kind of made loving eyes at the beginning when they saw each other. Turns out Jessup has been here, was raised here, went to high school here, and they've known each other for that long. But anyway, they're in the back room, and, they confess that they have feelings for each other and always have. They have a little make-out sesh before she's like, this is not how I always thought it was go, at the back of a storeroom at my work. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, can we just hang out anyway, But then there's this really funny shot of, this guy's keeping watch in the dog food, and he has a little lamp right there, and he's just eating a little sandwich, and then all of a sudden this giant freaking mosquito looking thing attaches itself to the window.
He said when we were watching the movie, I know what he meant, but it was just funny the way he said it. He was like, is that just a bug? is that just a bug?
Well,
I know how you meant it. It was like
Me not
this
knowing-
freaking massive thing just plopped on the window. Is that just a bug?
It's just okay. At this point in the movie, I didn't know if the mist was like doing something to the animals or if it was one of the creatures.
It was just funny.
Like the question was coming from me is like, is that like a mosquito that's been mutated? Is that what's going on right now? Because I was still in the dark completely. It was a good guess. It was wrong, but it was a good guess.
It's just a bug, no big deal.
D-Mac over here, I said it's either a mutated bug or it's a part of the creatures on the outside, and always has been. He's like, one of those is right and one of them is wrong. And I said, well, thank you for your insight, D-Mac. But so we see this and we start to see a bunch of them like collect on the glass.
Yeah.
And then
Shining flashlights out through the window, and they are just like swarming outside.
yeah, it seems that they're attracted to light. We find that out in just a second. And then this pterodactyl looking motherfucker comes out of nowhere and starts grabbing these mosquito looking fucks and cracking the glass more. And then that's when somebody's like, they're attracted to the light. We need to snuff the lights. But at this point, people are turning on lights because they thought that they needed to ward them away.
Yeah, their emergency protocol was like if they were in danger, they were going to flip on the work lights in the store. But while they're doing that, the people up front are realizing they're attracted to light. Turn all the lights off.
And of course, it's the rednecks doing
Yeah.
this. They're like,
I mean, granted, at this point, they're the good guys. They're trying their best here at this point. So while David and Ollie are freaking out turning off the lights, they're in the back of the store turning on the lights, and the pterodactyls are attacking more before finally the part of the glass breaks, and one of these mosquito creatures gets in, and then more get in, and then Sasha gets bitten on the neck, and her face swells up the size of a grapefruit, and she dies.
Conveniently right after a sentimental scene.
Yeah, they really set that one up, but she's dead. And then like they've had this emergency protocol where they have like this flammable liquid in these mop buckets, and they were gonna light the mops on fire like torches as weapons. And
I guess when you're desperate, you
yeah, I mean,
try
you
everything.
use what you got, but one of them gets
go well.
one of them gets turned over and it's on fire, and this dude gets lit up. Which, by the way, we never see how the ending of this dude. So, back to what we were saying. So Sasha's dead. Her face blew up like a balloon, and she's dead. The mop bucket got turned over, and Joe, that's all we ever know him as, gets caught on fire and is like running through the whole store, almost catching the whole place on fire. Pterodactyls are gotten in. Ollie, who apparently was a marksman champion in '94, is like, I got this. And he starts blowing holes in these creatures, which he can't really because there's people in the way and he doesn't want to break the glass. So he's having to be really strategic of his shots. And then we get this moment where one of the mosquitoes lands on Mrs. Carmody and like crawls up and like produces its stinger, and she's like says some kind of thing to God like I will do for thee.
It's kind of like the snake ordeal. Like,
Yeah.
If I'm worthy, it won't bite me.
Yeah, okay. Moving on. It doesn't sting her. It flies off, which now she thinks that she is a divine vessel. And we see this other shot of the pterodactyl-like creature, or like a bird-like creature, I guess, like perching in the middle of the hall, and we see Billy like face-to-face with it, and we see Ollie at the other end with a gun pointed, and then David like rushes over, grabs his son, and pulls it away, and as soon as he's out of the shot, boom, dead.
Yeah, it's freaking badass.
At this point,
it's a pretty long shot, too.
Yeah,
it is.
I'm
With a
surprised.
pistol.
I'm surprised that he didn't die. But they kill all the remaining ones inside. They, get Joe over to a separate area. They kind of, I don't know if they mend the break or not, but they do something to prevent more from coming in. I know that because no more get in. And so it kind of fast forwards a little bit further where we see the teacher lady. I can't believe I didn't catch her name the entire movie, but she's like laying there next to David and Billy, and they kind of have a bonding moment. And before David's called over to come look at Joe, who's like, kill me, I'm in so much pain. That scene from Family Guy with Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy had a baby, and it's like, I'm in constant pain. But they're like, you're right. All we have is like liquor and pain, like very mild, like Aleve or Advil or some bullshit.
Yeah, so they decide they want to go to the pharmacy, and they're just kind of reaching a breaking point almost of where they're like, not like the skeptics, but they're more of like, what else can we do?
They're the survivors.
Yeah.
And the other people have now proclaimed Miss Carmody as this kind of like prophet. She has like 4 followers.
There's a really good like build up, like, oh, she has 4 followers now, then she'll have 4 more, and then by the next night she'll be like
she'll be making sacrifices.
She'll be the Jim Jones.
Yep, drink the Kool-Aid. But they decide to go. They meet some resistance. Like, you can't go out there. You'll let them all in. And they're like, we're going. And then the brother of Joe's like, I'm going whether I go alone or not. And so they band together, the survivor group, and they go through the mist to the next door pharmacy, where we see that the windows have been broken. There is mist on the inside, and they start rummaging through the place and grabbing some pretty powerful sounding drugs.
Yeah, I mean,
all the Orides and Oxidils and all the crazy stuff.
All the Tosins.
them Pams.
pain medication, burn meds.
Yeah, and the whole reason they went over there is because apparently Ollie had heard that from the guy who runs the pharmacy that they had this really high grade like burn ward medication in there, and so that's the whole reason they went. So as they're going through, somebody gets grabbed from the spider web, like a sack, and we see it's the MP from earlier who came to tell them not to leave, and he's like, "I'm sorry, it's all our fault. We're responsible," that kind of stuff. And then we start to see more spider webs, and we see more people are in the spider webs.
Yeah, he looks up with his flashlight, and they're just everywhere.
And the MP, like, with his free hand, like, rips away his clothes, and we see what looks like a hive of holes that looks like he's, like, infested with spiders, which he is.
Pods and egg sacs in his
Which,
skin.
it's safe to say that this is D-Mac's favorite part of the movie. But quickly it devolves in because we get a look at these spider creatures. They're a lot like the mosquito-like creatures, smaller, but they're more spider in orientation. They can produce webs.
It's like, did the spider scene in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark scare you? Then watch this.
Yeah, it's worse, way worse. But special thing about these spiders is that their silk that they produce for their cobwebs, or their webs in general, burn like acid from an alien being
Yeah,
cut.
all these creatures seem to be very acidic.
Yeah, it really reminds me of almost like if the xenomorph was just a certain creature from a certain dimension.
Yeah.
Like these are the other. It reminds me a lot of what we now know as the Upside Down in Stranger Things, like the Demogorgon and all that jazz. Like it kind of reminds me of that kind of dimension. That's what I
Where
imagine
it's like
they come
all the
from.
creatures are unique and different, but they all are kind of like, it's like the Demodogs, the Demobats, and
Yeah, they all have a special purpose that we are just not aware of, and we don't really want to be aware of what their purpose is. Really,
not yet.
not yet. But
They're bursting. These things are bursting.
yeah, like a chest burster, the MP explodes with a bunch of tiny baby spiders. They all try to rush out as fast as they can. When Joe's brother goes down, he's dead, and they're like, "He's dead. We gotta keep moving." And so David leaves him behind, and they run back over to the supermarket like, "Let us in."
And when they're leaving too, you can see like all the spiders running over to the new body.
Yeah,
presumably to it. Oh god.
But they go back into the supermarket, and they're like, Jessup, he probably, like, the soldiers probably know what's going on, and so they corner Jessup. The survivors do.
How many holes you think them spiders got up?
Huh?
How many holes you think them spiders got in through?
I don't want to think about it. Thank you. All of them.
All of them.
Anyway, so they corner Jessup, the survivors do, and they're like, "You have to know something." It's like, "I don't know anything." And it's like, "Maybe we can ask my friends." And they go back to the back, and they find their friends hung up in the back. They had
After what's it, how do you pronounce his name?
Jessup.
After he told them that the MP basically kind of ratted them out, I guess the guilt probably just overtook them, and they were just that desperate to be out of the situation. Like, even if things were magically okay, they would still have all of those lives on their hands because they were a part of it.
Yeah, they offed themselves to get away from it, I guess. And then, by the way, Redneck from earlier that David got into the scuffle with, that was become a good guy, has now become a member of the cult that has grown.
And what's funny is
exponentially.
he is one of the ones that called her crazy at the beginning.
Yeah, he tried to shove his size 10 food up her butt.
But
How have we not mentioned the old lady yet?
oh well, she's hilarious. There's a scene earlier in the movie. I don't know her name. I'm sorry. I'm the guy that always references.
I'm
other
also
media.
struggling with names. It's not that they're bad characters.
No, they're great
It's-
characters.
It's just their names don't get mentioned a lot,
There's
I
a
think.
lot of names that just kind of come quick. And then,
Like Jed, Norman,
Yeah.
like
Jim.
stuff like that. It's a lot of average names.
When
but
they're trying to leave to go to the pharmacy, I think that's when the peas.
yeah, they get stopped by Mrs. Carmody, and she like throws a can of peas and hits her in the head, and she's like, "Get away, you old buzzard! I got more peas.
I got more
she
peas.
was like, they like to stone people in the Old Testament, huh? Well, I got more cans of peas.
Another, probably in my top 4 favorite
Yeah.
characters in this movie. But
And then there's also the scene where she freaking gets the thing and sprays the fire.
oh yeah, she sprays the fire on, like, she takes a can of hairspray and a lighter and like lights a spider on fire. It's really cool. But the redneck from earlier, we see him turn back as they go in, and he goes in there and he grabs Jessup and
Yeah, they're
drags him.
basically starting to plan an escape.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out the best course of action to get the hell out of here before, Mr. Redneck over here grabs Jessup and pulls him out and is like, it's his fault. It's their fault. The army did this to us. Whatever they're doing up there at the Arrow Point facility. That's what.
Yeah.
And then we see Mrs. Carmody go full he's trying to explain himself, and that he's saying that what he had heard is that the scientists knew about other dimensions and they wanted to create a window so that they could look into it. And she's like, well, turns out that window was a door and it was all y'all's fault that did it. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of get an explanation that maybe that this was some kind of science experiment gone wrong by the military.
Yeah, they were definitely doing some kind of dimensional openings, and the way it seemed to be, he described it as that it ripped open essentially and flooded out.
Sounds very familiar to Stranger Things. I wonder if that's where they got that idea. But I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of similar, even with how we were talking about the creatures.
Yeah.
Stephen King is obviously so influential.
Yeah. And the book probably came out in probably the 80s or the 90s.
Yeah.
I don't know how old the book is.
I don't know.
idea. I've never actually looked into that. But.
You know what? I love to say this. Smite Lad, do your job. Research it. But
he grabbed
he grabbed Jessup. Yeah. And so she's like, it's all his fault. We're going to make an example out of him. And they start beating him up. And then this butcher dude that we don't know his name stabs him a few times. And she's like, feed him to the beast. Mm-hmm. And there's this cool shot of they crowd surf him to the front as he's bleeding from his stomach, yelling. And they dump him outside and close the door. And he's like, please let me back in. And we hear some creature noises. And we turns around. There's this giant behemoth of what appears to be it reminds me of the monsters from the first Godzilla, where they're the big insectoid creatures.
Yeah, it makes me think of a creature that's in the DLC Far Harbor for Fallout 4. There's a creature that looks just like this, but I can't think of what it is.
Crustacean, like a crab, like a giant.
Almost like a Mirelurker from Fallout, but a little different. But anyway.
But he basically just reaches down and pinches him and pulls him off.
Eats him like a potato chip.
Yeah.
And it's at this point that, what somebody said earlier, that this whole cult is going to start sacrificing people, becomes reality. So they quickly make up a plan where Ollie's like, I'm going to pack a bunch of bags full of groceries. I'm going to put it up front. When we make our escape early tomorrow morning, we can grab it and go. Mm-hmm. So they all go to sleep. And then David is woken up in the middle of the night by Billy, who says, Dad, I need you to make me a promise. And that is that you won't let the monsters eat me. And so he makes this promise. Cuts forward to the morning where teacher lady, don't know her name, wakes up David and is like, it's morning, it's time to go. And they go up front. The groceries are not there. And Mrs. Carmody with a knife is waiting on them.
Yep, just twirling it.
Yep. So at this point, Mrs. Carmody has fully lost her mind and is also on a power trip. And so she incites a kind of a riot with a bunch of people surrounding these group of people that are trying to leave, claiming that they can't leave now, that they're a part of this too, and that, it's their fault that this is happening because they're non-believers, which she's quickly changed her tune from we all need to prepare to just die to now I am the vessel of God's wrath.
It takes a little bit of power.
Yeah, it just takes a little bit. And she's like, it's my duty to enforce God's wrath upon, for us to basically, be resolved of our sins through sacrifice, practically.
Expiation.
Oh my God, one of the best jokes in the movie when they're planning their escape. Ollie says that, welcome to Sesame Street. Today's word is, how do you say it? Expiation. Today's word is expiation.
It's really funny. Ollie is the best character in this movie, period.
Oh my God.
I will stand on that hill and die.
Him and the old lady, they're so good.
But she incites this riot, talking about how she's the vessel. They start trying to go after Billy and the whore, which is the teacher, I guess to sacrifice them.
Yeah,
I'm not
and
sure.
he even mentioned that earlier in the movies, like how long until they even go after like my little son. So.
You, my son.
Right.
Like, he literally says that.
Miss Carmody's like, get the boy,
Get
the
that
whore too.
Yeah, get the whore too.
Yeah, it's
When then all of a sudden, as like things get to a very heightened sense, we hear a single shot ring out from a gun, and we see Ollie, who has just shot Mrs. Carmody in the stomach.
It's the biggest, yes.
And then he finishes her off with a shot to the head, and as she falls over dead, David says, "Thank you, Ollie," which says exactly what we all needed to say. And as they're like, going to the front door, Ollie's like, "I didn't want to shoot her. I only did it because it was absolutely necessary." And David's like, "That's why I said thank you, Ollie." So
There's also one lady who's like, in particular, like,
her first follower.
yeah, like she's heavily like kind of scolding them as they're going
You
out the
murderers.
door. Yeah.
So right now we have, I swear I knew his name, but it left me. The guy who emerged from the mist the first time. We have the old lady with the can of peas. We have David, the teacher, Billy, his son. We have the guy who has the shotgun in his truck. We also have the manager of the store
Yes.
that are all trying to leave, go to David's car, and make their escape. So they go out quickly. Sure enough, the monsters find their attention. The manager and the guy with the shotgun get separated. The guy with the shotgun is killed off screen pretty quickly, and we see the manager reroutes back to the front, and we last see him like banging on the window. We don't know if he got back in or not just yet. And then we see the other guys. Ollie gets to the car, opens up the doors like he's supposed to. When he turns around and he sees the group approaching, and we're almost there, when that giant behemoth from earlier is right behind him,
Yep.
grabs Ollie up, and eats him like a potato chip.
Dang, I'm eating good here.
I was so upset. But this creature like eats one person and then turns around and leaves. So that seems to be its like thing. So it leaves. The other people pile into the car, which now we are down to 5 people. Mm-hmm. They pull out, and we see them leave as like he has like this Jeep with a bunch of lights on the front. We see the lights go across the faces of the people watching from the inside of the store, and we see that the manager of the store had made it back inside. And then they drive off. And as they're driving, eventually, they're on this open freeway, and the mist is just going on and on and on.
Stop by David's house.
Yeah.
And
They stop by David's house to find his dead wife and cobwebs.
Yeah, because the whole movie, that was kind of like...
The whole inciting thing, why he
Yeah.
was there in the first place. Mm-hmm. They continue to drive down the freeway after he says, let's just see how far this tank will get us. And they drive, and then they eventually stop because the ground's rumbling, and we see this ginormous behemoth of a creature cross the road. And once it departs, they continue on.
It like just to show like how massive on scale it is. Like those pterodactyl bat looking things are swarming around it, and they look like that compared to how big he is.
It looks like a school of minnows, I think they're minnows, like eating like the little parasites off of whales.
yeah.
It looks like they're just taking nips at a big whale.
It's like fish and
Yeah, and it's got like all these tentacles coming out of its mouth and
Yeah.
belly.
It might be the creature that tried to attack earlier.
It's possible.
Maybe.
Tentacles.
We don't know though.
It's-
But it cuts forward to them driving further down, and we hear the engine starting to give way. And then finally it comes to a stop as we see that the tank is on E. They're still in the mist. They all look at each other about what they're going to do now.
and they hear a creature coming.
Yeah, they hear creatures in the distance. And when it's like, the old guy who escaped the mist at the very beginning is like, we gave it a good try. And then the old lady's like, yep. And they're like, we see David, he pulls out the gun, and he looks at the old man behind him, and they kind of he gives a nod of like, yes. And he looks around at everybody else as kind of the gravity of the situation is coming into
'Cause
grips.
In that scenario, I'd be in the same boat. It's like, do I want to be ripped by acid spider webs or ripped in half by a monster or just get shot. It's like, yeah, what's the better outcome here?
But then they realize that they only have 4 bullets left, and there's 5 people. And so, you know, the teacher that's been with them this whole time is like, there's only 4 bullets, but there's 5 of us. And David says, I'll figure something out. As he loads up the gun, we see the car from the back as we hear 4 shots go off. As his son wakes up and looks at him, it goes to this shot. And there's 4 shots that go off, and we next see David in a car full of dead people screaming in agony as he's trying his hardest to, to end it for himself, but there is no bullets left. I'm not going to lie, I laughed at first because his scream, it sounded funny, but then, you know, maybe that's just like the acting. I don't know. Maybe it's how it would really be. But it's just such
It's like if one of us broke down into a scream, even if you've broke down crying, you make the weirdest noises. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It came from a place of such raw pain. So there's no telling. It could have been real. I don't know. But, you know, he's trying to off himself and to no avail, and he's just so mad, and he just throws the gun, and he opens up the door, closes it, and he's like, come on,
he's hyping himself up. He's like, just...
And we hear the creatures, and, you know, he turns towards the front of the car when we see something coming up behind him, and we assume that it's a creature, just for it to give way, and it's a tank.
Yeah, like a fucking big-ass, badass military tank just... surrounded by troops.
Yep. And the mist is slowly clearing as we see that soldiers are burning off these like sacks on trees and things like that. And we see a bunch of caravan full of survivors pass, and there's a shot as we zoom in on one of them. We see the lady from the beginning, Carol from The Walking Dead, with her 2 kids that she left to go save, and they make eye contact as they pass. And we see that the mist is fully gone, like within a minute, and there's just piles and piles of survivors leaving the city. What were you about to say, D-Mac?
I was going to say, that scene adds credibility to your theory that it's not the mist that brought the creatures, it's the creatures
that brought the mist. Yeah.
Because as they're killing the creatures that lay in the woods and on the street,
yeah, it's like they're slowly...
So it does make me wonder if that is the case.
It's almost like a byproduct of their habitat.
Right.
Like, wherever, like... I'm sorry, nerd stuff today. Dragons in Dungeons and Dragons, their presence when they make a lair, it affects a radius of like miles beyond their lair. It literally changes the terrain, making it hotter, colder, you know, make exotic plants grow. I think it's very similar. I think that their presence are a part of this dimension that makes the mist happen. Mm-hmm. But we're taking away from the ending, which is everything's fine. The military has taken over, has pushed back the mist, and it was all for nothing. As David falls to his knees screaming as 2 soldiers come over to help him, we get credits.
Yeah.
And that's the mist.
Mercy killed his closest friends and his only child
for nothing.
For nothing. Yeah.
And, you know, I keep saying it, and I mean, I get the whole point. It's just like, if only they had enough gas to last like 1 more minute. Or if they could have talked for just 1 more minute.
That's what makes it so impactful. Genuinely one of the most iconic endings of all time. Like, I remember watching this as a kid, and this was probably like one of the first what the heck endings I ever experienced watching horror as a kid. And like, I was like, what?
See, I thought I was drawing parallels to the remake of Dawn of the Dead the entire time when they're in the mall. And, you know, I mean, it's been years since I've seen that movie. I'm pretty sure everybody dies in that movie. But, like, it doesn't have a happy ending. I know that for damn sure. And it's just like, I was fully ready. My mind was fully ready for there not to be a happy ending. I was ready.
You knew there had to be more with how much people were hyping up how crazy
I never heard the hype. I never once said that heard that this movie's ending was iconic.
I feel like that's all people refer to when they talk about this movie is the ending.
I literally, when I tell you that I have heard of The Mist, but I have heard nothing of The Mist, I mean it.
He's so lucky too.
I know, because that makes it even. You got that same experience.
Well, when it happened, when I saw the tank, I said, no, no, you motherfuckers, do not do this. Let him go out. Let him die.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even care if he died and then there was this scene where it's like literally an hour later. Or something. It's just, I hate that he survived.
The fact that he has to live now.
Yes.
Knowing what
you know that he didn't survive.
Yeah.
He definitely was either checked into an asylum or he offed himself. There is no way that he lived with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
But I feel like that's what makes it so impactful. The fact that it was just so soon after he had just done that.
Shakespeare couldn't write a more fucked up ending, I swear.
It's the whole movie is like a game of chance. The lady took the chance to go save her kids. She happened to make it out. Everyone's taking chances throughout the whole movie. Most of the time they don't pan out, and then he
took a chance to go to the pharmacy and.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't blame him though, because it's like, what else were they supposed to do?
I understand, but it's the irony of it all.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, of course, the moment that they give up hope, it's like what you always say, like, you never get what you, like, you know, a lot of religious people point this out, but it's like, things come to you when you least expect it, or when you give up on it. You know, you find love when you stop looking for it. It's much like that.
After they've been there for days, though, they've seen about everything, and then they literally just drove for probably hours just to see a never-ending mist. They're probably just like, I mean, what are we gonna do?
It reminds me of the meme, the like gambling brain rot meme, where it's the guy digging underground, and he gets an inch away from diamonds on the other side, but he just gives up and walks away because he doesn't know. That's essentially what they did. They gave up because they thought that was their only option.
Yeah, they thought it was thought that this was it, and then all of a sudden, boom. Who would have thought that being the one? What's so even more fucked up about it is that if he didn't make that promise to his kid and would have tried to sacrifice the kid to the creatures, maybe it would be over quicker because he couldn't shoot him, then all of a sudden the kid would have survived. And that would have been so much better. But why they couldn't justify it with how they like had built the movie up. Like, I totally understand why it happened the way it happened. I understand why he chose to sacrifice himself to the creatures. It makes total sense. It is a greatly written thing. It's just, my God, seeing that, I've never been so upset seeing safety come into frame from a disaster. It's like almost you wanted the mist to take him. You were cheering for his, final blaze of glory death just for it to be taken away from you. And that is so heart-wrenching in the worst way possible. There is nothing redeeming about it. It was all for nothing. It was all for survival, but then that amounted to nothing. And it's just like, you leave it going, dude.
But like I said, in the moment, the characters did not know that, so.
I know.
They would never know.
Great acting. Period. Well, I think that about sums up our opinion, and I think that sums up our synopsis. So why don't we just go ahead and dive on into the scores here?
Yep.
All right. So like always, we're going to start off with story. Zombie Cat, please take over. I've talked too much.
Okay, for story, it's pretty fun, but it's pretty simple, but very effective. So I'd give the story an 8, about a dad trapped in a grocery store with his son, basically defending him from otherworldly creatures. So it's nothing insane, but it's great. So I'd give it an 8.
You know what? For how I think I just like this kind of movie.
Oh, I didn't say it.
No. I'm just saying, like, I keep drawing parallels to the remake of Dawn of the Dead, which I love. I love the whole premise of this group of people stuck in this, like, extraordinary situation in this ordinary place that, my God, is that one of the best places to be in this situation, and just watching it slowly just fall apart.
It also lets your mind race with, how is this going to end? Are they going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Are they gonna...
I gave it an 8 for sure. A hard, solid 8. I think this came out at a time where this was not an overdone thing, and I don't think it is an overdone thing even today. But I think that the execution...
Cliches are cliches for a reason.
Yeah.
It's like, if they're executed well, It's some of the best stuff you can get. So.
I think its execution was really well, and I think that it's very real to life. I think that that's really how people would descend, and I really liked it, so I'm giving it an 8. Moving on to characters. You gave it an 8, I gave it an 8. That's an 8 for story. But moving on to characters. Hands down, love the characters. Whether I hated them, loved them, whether I knew their name or I didn't, I gave the characters a 9.
Yeah, I'm also going to give the characters a 9. Miss Carmody is one of my favorite horror movie characters. She's fucking insane.
Like, besides, the offhanded deaths, every single person in this movie you had some kind of attachment to. Whether it was, my God, I can't wait for you to die, or it was, I hope you make it to the end, or the heart-wrenching moment for me when Ollie got picked up after saving the day, getting him to the car, and he dies.
The only reason
quickly.
it's not a 10 is there's a few stragglers, like Jessup, was that his name? It was like they tried to build something there a little too late, and that kind of just fell off. I was
even his acting though, like when he was being carried out.
That was great. I'm just talking about as a whole, like the character,
Right.
like just
There's only a few movies where I think that the characters deserve a 10, and one of them we have referenced in this movie review, but very offhandedly and not many times. But that's just because the story called for it. I don't see that these characters as the not antithesis, but the perfected version of what I think a character should be.
No, not at all. It's more so just you get attached to them,
Right. Whether you know their name or not, and you cheer for them, and you want it to work out for them, but it just doesn't. And so therefore, because of the fact that you got the Ollie, my boy, no, that's a 9. Whenever the tank appears at the end, and these 4 brilliant characters have just died in the freaking car, you're like, bro, no. that deserves at least a 9 in my opinion, to elicit that kind of response, and I didn't even know their names.
Yeah, really,
that's a big
really good and very entertaining.
So, wow, we're agreeing on all fronts right now. So characters, 9 for characters. Moving on, antagonists. I think that there are 2 different antagonists in this movie.
I'm disqualifying it all as one, as just the mist.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna go.
The creatures are a part of
No.
Mist.
I was talking more like the creatures and the mist are the same thing.
Yeah.
But I was saying that there is another antagonist in this movie in Mrs. Carmody.
Yeah, that's true. But the main threat is the mist.
We're going to be giving a score to the mist itself. I think that Mrs. Carmody is roped in there with the characters.
She's just a byproduct of.
Yeah,
right.
If she wouldn't even be in this state if it wasn't for the mist.
Right.
So for the mist itself, I think that the mist is creative because this was a lot before we got into movies that like to dimension travel and stuff like that. So I think that the mist is creative. I think how it's produced with My Theory is creative. I love the monsters in this like eldritch horror style fashion. So for those reasons, I'm giving, and also we never get answers. We never get answers about the enemy at all.
I so would love for there to be like a book written just on the universe or the dimension that these creatures come
Have you
from,
watched the
because
TV show?
No.
Yeah, there's a TV show.
I wonder if the TV show expands upon like the scientists like researching this place, finding it, all this other stuff.
What's it called?
The
Mist.
Oh, shit. I have no idea.
But for those reasons, I'm giving Antagonist a solid 8.
Yeah, I agree. It's like nothing too crazy, but it's so good because it's like the whole time my mind's racing, wondering like what else is out there.
Oh yeah.
After you see that freaking Goliath monster, you're just like, what else is in this freaking world?
Imagine The Mist 2, but it's the same day and everything, but it's like off the coast. Like you're in a fucking fishing ship and these monsters are coming out of the
sea creatures.
ocean, dude. That'd be nuts.
Jaws, but The Mist.
So you're giving Antagonist an 8 too? Wow. So first time this has ever happened. Our first 3 scorings, we agree. We are 8 for Antagonist. Now humor. Okay, this is a complicated one for me because there are funny parts, but I do not think this is a funny movie.
No, but the jokes in it are so good. They land so hard for me when they do happen. that a lot of it comes out of anger. Like when they're calling somebody stupid, like they'll go on and just like make these remarks that are just hilarious.
This is what I consider to be the perfect mix of humor with how serious the tone is for the movie.
Yeah, this is how you do it.
It's a great mix.
Because like I said, it typically comes from a place of anger when they're just saying stuff like the redneck be like just shouting at Miss Carmody, but it's like, yeah.
Of course, the old lady had a bunch of good singers.
Yeah. I got more peas.
Yeah, and the peas and the buzzard line.
So what do you think?
I'd give the humor a 7 because like it's genuinely really funny. There's a lot of good jokes in here, especially the Sesame Street joke that really cracked me up. The old lady was hilarious. Ollie was hilarious. The rednecks were pretty freaking funny, and just like the goofiness of some of the characters, like Carmody, like just it's so over the top and so good. Like I just loved it.
I can't give it a 7. I didn't find it that funny. I think I'm going to give it a 5 for humor. I think that the humor was perfectly mixed with the seriousness of the situation. I don't think it was funny enough for me to grant it above a 5, but I don't think that, I mean, now that, you know, we've been talking about it, I definitely don't think that it's like a 1. So I'm going to give it an average 5 just to cover my bases, because I'm sure that there's some funny bits that I forgot. So
Welcome to Sesame Street, watchers.
Yeah.
Today's number is 5. He gave it a 5.
yeah, today's number for me is 5. So I gave it a 5. You gave it a 7. That's a 6 for humor. That's above what I would consider this for this movie. I borderlined a 4. Just because, like, yes, the jokes are there. It is funny. I just don't think that this is a funny movie. So, moving on to scariness. This is a little tricky because I didn't find this movie scary, but I think that it is scary.
Yeah, this movie
In concept, it's horrifying.
Right.
Yeah, this movie is scary as shit when you look at it like that. I'd probably give scariness for this movie like it's hard. I'll just rock with a 7 because that's the safest to put it at. It's like the monsters are freaking horrifying. The spiders bursting out of the chest and the big mosquitoes, I did not like that at all. And also just the curiosity of what's in the mist, and just it's yeah. Even Miss Carmody is scary. She's pretty damn scary.
You know, I think that I'm going to give this movie a 6 for scariness. I feel pretty confident in that one. I think that it is scary in, like, on paper. Like, what I mean is, like, if the situation was real, it'd be absolutely terrifying. I think that the creature design is creepy and cool, even though some of the CG hasn't aged very well.
Yeah, I told him that before going into it. I was telling that to you too. Hopefully you watched the movie before this review. Mm-hmm. But you kind of have to go into it expecting some 2007 CG because some of it hasn't aged well, but it's fine enough because the story
doesn't impact the movie at all.
Yeah, because it's still just so good that that's just something you kind of overlook.
It's not so bad that it's abhorrent.
No, God, no.
It's well done for the time, and I mean, obviously, it made me go, you know, I kind of wouldn't mind seeing a remake. But I'm a little scared of them doing that because I probably won't like the actors as much.
Yeah, also, like, where would you go with it unless they followed the book more faithfully?
Right.
Possibly.
Which I've never read the book either, so...
I haven't read the book, and a lot of people that have read the book hate the movie, and a lot of people just... they say there's some big differences. I don't even think it's that long of a book for Stephen King, which is surprising.
As somebody who is in the midst of reading it for the first time, anything is shorter than that one. Chapter 3 is 5.5 hours long, I swear. But moving on. So I gave it a 6. You gave it a 7 for scariness. Mm-hmm. That gives us a solid 6.5 for scariness. I don't think that it's like scare your pants off, but at the same time, like, it's not the actual movie that's scary, it's the situation that's scary. and like the descent into madness by the people around you, the distrust, the
Granted, show this to the right person and probably would scare the shit out of
Oh, I'm sure. I've just never been scared by monster movies.
I have a relative who got scared of Scary Movie.
Of like scary movie?
Yeah.
Like, what's up? Scary movie?
Just seeing
Wow.
Ghostface on the screen alone was enough to scare them.
Wow.
These people do exist.
This is a funny story about that same person. They were watching one of those like low budget sci-fi movies with like super CG creatures, and it was about like a saber-toothed tiger, and she called my mom at like 3 a.m. and asked her to come spend the night with her because she was too scared of the saber-toothed tiger or something like that. So yeah, there are people that this would be hell to watch.
I'm desensitized, bro.
We are.
We've been watching this since we were like 5.
As a generation, I think we're all fairly distant.
Yeah, but we ain't getting into all that now. But moving on to experience. How we felt about the movie as a whole.
This movie is great. It's not perfect, so I would lowball it and give it an 8, but I can't think of why I would, so I'd give it a 9 because there's no reason for me not to that I can think of, because everything's so good. Like, the story's good, the characters are good, the monsters are badass, it's pretty scary, there's good jokes that don't take away from the movie. Like, yeah, it's just a solid kick-ass horror movie.
I think I'm inclined to agree. See, I'm teetering between an 8 and a 9.
I am too, but I'm like, why would I go lower than a 9? I can't think of a reason.
My reason for going to 9 is like looking at the other scores that I have. It's not so much that I couldn't make an argument for somebody giving it an 8 or even myself giving it an 8. I think I could see that, and I think for a lot of people it will be an 8. But it's just like looking at the character, looking at each part of this machine separately and then adding it all together. Mm-hmm. I think that it deserves a 9 because, I mean, yeah, sure, like there are other movies that have done a very similar story, just not with the same creatures. And, you know, the antagonist, like the mysterious force that we don't know much about, that happens a lot. You know, the likable characters, that happens a little
Once again,
less.
it all just falls down to how it's executed.
I think that the execution lends itself to a 9. I think that I really can't complain about much other than
like
maybe
some meh CG and
well, I mean, I wouldn't have minded a little more, like make it last a little longer, like a couple more days of like going through the trenches, like more interactions. Maybe some of them had to like brave the mist a few more times in order to see what was out there, and like, you know, maybe some introductions of some survivors that have been in the mist for a little while longer. You know, there are things that they could have done.
I haven't, like I said, I haven't read the book and I haven't watched the TV show, so maybe that expands on a lot that we don't know about.
So I'm gonna give it a 9. I'm gonna agree with you. So that pretty much means that for all but 2 scores, we agreed.
Yeah.
So we give it a 9 for experience. You know, I have differing opinions on the scariness and the humor of this movie, but that doesn't mean at all that it's a bad movie. I just didn't find it scary, and the jokes are there. I just didn't think it warranted above what I gave it. So that's my reasonings for some of the lower scores. But anyway, great movie. Definitely am going to buy it the first opportunity I get. Definitely am going to rewatch it. Which, I'm just going to throw my hat in this ring. I want to cover Dawn of the Dead remake soon.
Yeah, that would be fun to do.
That is such a good movie, and I can't wait to cover it.
It'd be fun to do a zombie movie.
But we got some other big heavy hitters coming a little later this month, if you stay tuned. We hope that you are enjoying Horror Havoc here at the Horror Den, our first ever. Just show your love and support if you're liking what we're doing here. You know, like, comment, subscribe, all that wonderful jazz. We do have an Instagram, so if you want to keep up to date on all of our real world shenanigans, head over to @the_Horror_Den channel on Instagram and give us a follow. And also, we have a Patreon.
Yeah, for as low as $5 a month, you can contribute to the channel and have your name put up like this right here, and just all funds go right back into the channel, like just for basic equipment and for the fact that all of us work full-time jobs and we have to take a pinch of time every week to do this. So anything else.
Yeah. Anytime that ever changes, if for some reason the funds of Patreon go towards anything else, you will be the first people to know.
Yeah.
If it ever changes purpose. But other than that, guys, that's been The Mist. We are the Horror Den. We hope you're enjoying your spooky season. Hope you're enjoying Horror Havoc. Make sure you click that notification bell to see all the upcoming videos that are coming out. We got, I think, a 9 total coming out this month.
Yeah.
So hope you watching them. Hope you liking them. But more importantly than everything else,
Stay spooky out there.